Welcome to Shadow Fable. Don't forget to subscribe. Elias stepped into the rain-soaked night, the city's neon reflections rippling on puddles like ghostly memories. Every step on the slick pavement echoed against the empty alleys of a metropolis that never slept. A relentless urban theater of despair and dark secrets. He pulled his collar up as if warding off not just the chill, but also the creeping dread of the unknown. Tonight, the weight of his personal tragedies mingled with the murmur of an urban conspiracy that had clawed its way into his restless mind. Weeks ago, an anonymous tip had sent him spiraling into a labyrinth of half-forgotten true crime cases, obscure cult rituals, and psychological oddities. Among the whisperings of an ancient curse, one artifact had emerged as an unlikely centerpiece, a weathered, almost forgotten relic, an odd, gnarled monkey's paw. It had surfaced at an estate sale in a dilapidated part of the city, surrounded by rumors of a cult that believed in twisting fate. That small piece of wood, etched with cryptic symbols and a history of sinister coincidences, promised to grant wishes at a price no one truly understood. Elias had always been a man on the fringes of hope and despair, a relentless seeker of truth who had suffered personal loss more than once. His sister's untimely death, the unsolved mystery that had tormented his nights, had left him with a hollow ache. As a journalist with a penchant for uncovering dark, hidden realities, he had encountered enough conspiracies to fill countless notebooks. But this was something entirely different. The cursed artifact was not a mere trinket of folklore. It was an insidious instrument of fate, a device that manipulated desire with lethal precision. That fateful evening, Elias retrieved the artifact from a secure storage locker arranged by an informant whose voice trembled with warnings over the phone. The pawn was clutched in a velvet-lined box, its surface rough and scarred by time. As he held it, a chill danced up his spine, a sensation as if the relic whispered silent promises and threats all at once. Its presence unsettled him deeply, but there was a perverse allure in its possibility, a chance to rewrite history, to undo the irreversible. Days blurred into sleepless nights. Elias found himself haunted by a recurring thought, a wish he barely dared to whisper, to bring back the one he'd lost. In the shadowy recesses of his mind, the desire for retribution against fate gnawed at him. Fueled by desperation and the moral ambiguity that had become his constant companion, he formulated a wish. Under the dim light of his cramped apartment, where rain tapped against the windows like a morbid metronome, he pressed his trembling hand against the relic and murmured, "Return what was taken from me." In that moment, the city seemed to hold its breath. The distant hum of traffic, the occasional wail of a siren, and the incessant patter of rain all converged into an eerie silence that wrapped around him like a shroud. The monkey's paw seemed to pulse beneath his fingers, its ancient carvings almost alive in the flickering light of a solitary lamp. For an instant, he believed that fate itself was bending to his will. The next morning, as pale sunlight fought its way through dense clouds, Elias awoke with a sense of disquieting anticipation. The relic lay innocuously on his desk, its presence both comforting and ominous. In the quiet moments of dawn, he stepped into the day with a cautious hope that perhaps, just perhaps, his wish had been granted. But as the hours slipped by, a creeping realization began to take shape. The city was unchanged. The cacophony of urban life continued unabated, indifferent to his secret. Yet, in the midst of its bustling routine, subtle disturbances began to surface. At first, it was a fleeting encounter on a crowded street, a stranger whose eyes held a mournful glint and whose smile was twisted by sorrow. The man muttered fragmented words of regret and loss, as if carrying a burden too heavy to share. Later, Elias stumbled upon a series of police reports involving a bizarre string of events. A series of accidents, unsolved crimes, and inexplicable coincidences that bore an uncanny resemblance to the notion of a reversed fate. In each case, victims seemed to reappear or circumstances morphed in strange ways, turning personal tragedies into public nightmares. Each thread led back to that cursed relic. Haunted by these ominous signs, Elias began to document the disturbing patterns with meticulous detail. Late nights found him in the dim glow of his computer screen, cross-referencing news articles, police logs, and whispered confessions of those who had once come into contact with the cursed object. Among the cases was one that stood out, a chilling true crime story involving a secretive cult. This group, long disbanded and scattered, had worshipped the power of fate. They believed that destiny was malleable and that by harnessing forbidden artifacts, one could rewrite the tapestry of life. Their experiments had left behind scars on the lives of many, and their methods were as cruel as they were calculated. In the murky margins of society, Elias discovered that the monkey's paw was not merely a relic, it was a weapon of calculated despair. The investigation led him to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of the city, a relic of a bygone industrial era, where echoes of forgotten labor still whispered through rusted machinery. Here, in the sprawling darkness, Elias encountered another figure, Marisol, a former cult member whose life had been shattered by her involvement in the clandestine rituals. Her eyes, once filled with fervor, now reflected only regret and shattered innocence. In hushed tones, she recounted her role in the cult's experiments, her voice trembling with a mix of sorrow and defiance. She had witnessed the cursed object's terrible influence firsthand, as a wish after wish had torn families apart and left scars that defied healing. Under the dim light of the warehouse, amidst crates covered in dust and remnants of past horrors, Marisol's story unfolded like a cinematic flashback. She described clandestine gatherings in darkened rooms, the palpable tension of desperate ambition, and the ultimate realization that the price of tampering with fate was far steeper than anyone could imagine. Her words painted a picture of a secret world, where ambition and despair coexisted in a delicate, dangerous balance. Yet, even as she spoke, there was a lingering hint of hope, a desire to undo the wrongs of the past, even if it meant facing the darkness within oneself. Elias listened intently, every word etching itself into his memory. Her narrative, full of moral ambiguity and raw emotion, resonated with his own inner torment. In that moment, he felt both the burden of his wish and the weight of his guilt. The desire to reclaim what he had lost had come at a cost he was only beginning to fathom. The relic, now pulsating with an almost malevolent energy, was not a mere tool for retribution. It was a mirror reflecting his own desperate longing, twisted by the cruelty of fate. As the days passed, the consequences of his wish began to unravel in unpredictable, horrifying ways. Subtle shifts in reality morphed into catastrophic events. A seemingly random car accident in which a beloved community leader was fatally injured was later revealed to have been averted by a series of inexplicable circumstances. Lives were rearranged like pieces on a chessboard, the outcomes as bitter as they were ironic. Elias found himself trapped in a web of consequences that spiraled far beyond his control. Each altered fate was a grim reminder that every wish carried its own hidden, unspeakable toll. Haunted by visions of what could have been, and tormented by the mounting evidence of fate's cruel twist, Elias began to question the nature of destiny itself. His once unyielding belief in rationality faltered under the weight of the inexplicable events that now punctuated his existence. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw flashes of faces, some familiar, others alien, all bearing the marks of tragedy. The line between victim and perpetrator blurred, and the moral clarity he once possessed dissolved into a murky haze of ethical uncertainty. Late one night, as a violent storm battered the city, Elias returned to the warehouse, determined to confront the relic and its sinister legacy. The rain hammered the concrete, and the air was thick with the smell of ozone and decay. In the gloom, Marisol waited with a quiet resolve, her eyes reflecting the storm's fury. She had come to warn him, perhaps even to guide him away from the path he had unwittingly chosen. Under the flickering glow of a single, bare bulb, Marisol spoke of the finality of wishes. "You must understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the clamor of the storm, "that altering fate is like trying to rewrite a script that's already been written. Every change, every desire leaves scars, and sometimes the scars write the ending." Elias's heart pounded as he stared at the relic. It seemed to throb with a life of its own, its surface alive with shifting patterns that defied logic. In that charged moment, he recognized the horror of his own hubris. The cursed object was not an instrument of salvation. It was a harbinger of irrevocable change, a token that extracted a steep price from those foolish enough to challenge destiny. In a burst of clarity, Elias recalled the numerous cases he had documented, stories of lives upturned, of hope twisted into despair. Each tale was a testament to the dark allure of tampering with fate, and as he reached out to seize the relic one last time, a sudden, overwhelming surge of dread overtook him. It was as if the relic, aware of his inner turmoil, was retaliating against his reckless ambition. A deafening crack of thunder shook the warehouse, and for an instant the world seemed to split into a series of disjointed, nightmarish snapshots. Elias's mind flashed with images of his sister's smiling face, the grim faces of those who had suffered, and a vast, unyielding void of regret. In that chaos, the cursed pawn slipped from his grasp, tumbling across the cold concrete floor. Its fall was the final punctuation in a sentence of despair, and in that moment, Elias knew that no wish, no matter how desperately wished for, could undo the irrevocable damage done by playing with fate. As the storm subsided into a mournful drizzle, Elias and Marisol stood in silence. The relic lay shattered, its fragments reflecting a grim mosaic of light and shadow. In the shattered pieces, Elias saw the twisted truth of his actions. His wish had not resurrected the past, but had rewritten it in a cruel parody of redemption. The lives it had touched, his own and those around him, were forever marred by the consequences of a desire to reclaim what was lost. In the weeks that followed, Elias continued his investigation, now burdened with the knowledge that fate was a labyrinth of moral ambiguity and shattered illusions. The city, too, bore the scars of his wish, its inhabitants unknowingly ensnared in a web of predestined tragedy. The once promising possibility of reclaiming the past had become a somber lesson in the futility of defying destiny. Late at night, as Elias sat in his cramped apartment with rain tapping against the window and the neon glow of distant billboards casting spectral hues across his desk, he penned the final lines of his account. His words, raw and unfiltered, were a confession, a testament to the darkness that lurked within every human desire. He realized that the true horror lay not in the cursed object, but in the relentless yearning to undo the irreversible. It was a truth that echoed through the empty corridors of his soul, a chilling reminder that every wish, no matter how noble or desperate, demanded a price that could never be repaid. In the dim light of that uncertain dawn, Elias vowed to share his story with the world. His account was not just a chronicle of the cursed monkey's paw, but a mirror reflecting the frailty of human nature. A stark portrayal of how the pursuit of impossible dreams can lead to an irreversible descent into darkness. And as he closed his notebook, the echo of the relic's final, silent whisper lingered in the air, a haunting refrain that would forever haunt the shadows of his mind. The city continued its relentless rhythm, indifferent to the secrets that lay buried in its underbelly. Yet, for those who dared to peer beneath the surface, Elias's story served as a grim reminder that in the pursuit of altering fate, one might just unleash a torrent of sorrow, a cascade of unintended consequences, and a dark destiny that no wish could ever undo. In the end, the cursed monkey's paw was not merely a relic of ancient lore, but a symbol of the perilous dance between hope and despair, a warning that the price of tampering with destiny might be the very soul of those who dare to dream.